Welcome back! We're ready to start with Unit A of our Gallery Quilt Sew Along. I'm going to go ahead and take the pieces out of my bag and start getting everything lined up for stitching together. I'm going to keep my instructions handy so I can refer to them, and then I'm going to lay out my pieces. All of these oatmeal colored pieces are my background, and I don't need those for this first step right yet, but I do need my 3 square pieces and my 1 long piece. And I'd left the label in here from when I labeled everything and cut it. I can go ahead and remove that now. Now I've got frames that I'm going to put on all of these 3 square pieces. 2 of them are getting blue frames and 1 is getting a brown frame. So that's those pieces, and then there's a brown frame around here, and I'm going to go ahead and set these background pieces aside for now. Now I want to refer back to my sheet knowing where I put all the fabrics. If you're picking your own fabrics, then you'll refer back to your coloring sheet to make sure that you're putting everything the way that you want it. So in this case, I want to make sure that it's this fabric that gets the brown frame and that it's these other 2 that get the blue frame. If you've been around this channel for a little while, you know that I'm a huge fan of chain piecing, and I will chain piece any chance I get. So I'm going to show you how to chain piece these pieces. I have the brown and the blue, and I'm going to go ahead and take the shorter pieces and put the larger pieces up top. So there we go. And then I will stitch on the sides. Now some of these fabrics are directional, which means that there is a right way up and down versus left to right, and you want to focus on that. For this piece, I don't have any of my square pieces directional. I do, however, have this long piece directional, but it's long, not square, so that's going to take care of itself. I don't have to worry about any directional fabrics, but if you have directional fabrics, know that we're putting on the side pieces first, so have your fabric facing up and down. Got the first one stitched, and then chain piecing is where I leave a little chain of thread and I just chain everything all along. So I leave a couple stitches, which will make it easy for me to cut apart, and then I keep stitching between each. So once I have 1 blue or brown piece on here, I know if it's blue or brown. I just need that 1 piece, and that kind of labels it at the same time as stitching it on, and so that's handy. Now I can go ahead and take one of these pieces off my chain. I can just use the thread cutter on the side of my machine and take the first piece, which is the beginning of my chain, and now I'll just add the other side. Okay, now we have all those side pieces on, and I want to go ahead and start slipping in the side pieces for this piece. Even though it's not till the next step in our pattern, I know where these pieces go, and I can go ahead and already start stitching them on as well. So I can take these pieces off, and then I'm going to press. And I'm having y'all press towards the frame fabric as it says in the instructions. So I'm just using my mini iron. And I've just got a wool pressing mat here next to my sewing station. And I love to have a pressing mat right next to my sewing station. It makes it so much quicker to put a quilt together instead of having to get up and go over to the ironing board and iron each piece, chain piecing, and then pressing everything right here without even having to get up makes my life so much easier. Okay, so these 2 already have their side frames on now, and I have my longer frame pieces up here, and I can start adding those on to the top and bottom. I want to get this long piece caught up since I didn't start chain piecing it right at the beginning, so I'm going to go ahead and add the other side to it and just sneak it in. Now, if it's easier for you to just put on two sides, press, and then put on the other two sides and press, go ahead and do that. You absolutely don't have to chain piece. I just love seeing my quilt put together. I'm so impatient. I do love the process of sewing, but I really love it when I get to see it all together. So this piece can get its top and bottom as well. And I press the sides on this one. And again, I'm pressing towards the frame fabric. I love how adding a border completely changes the look of the fabric. I didn't even really notice these lovely browns in here until I started adding this brown border. So fun. I'm going to go ahead and add one of the top or bottom borders onto this long piece. We're adding all the top and bottom border pieces now. So after this one, each piece will have 3 borders. And now I'm going to add the final border onto each one of these pieces. And the last border on this one. And then we'll be pressing all these borders out again. Now I'm chain piecing, and you can see I have nothing to put here, and that's okay. I'm just going to leave this piece on for the time being, and I will work on pressing these. Okay, all of these pieces are stitched up. I have my first framed pictures, and they are so adorable. And I'm going to finish up that first step by putting the background pieces between these. So I want to lay them out. And the reason that I lay them out is because I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing. And laying it out is kind of like a dry run. So I know I have this piece on the right, this piece in the middle, and this piece on the left. And I also want to make sure that the long piece is across the top. It's so easy, especially if your fabrics aren't directional, to turn it, and then it's just not as clean. Is it the end of the world? Absolutely not, especially if they're not directional. And then I have these 2 pieces of background fabric that go right in between. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch those on. So I can stitch this one. And the piece that I need to attach here is already under my sewing machine. So I could go ahead and work on this piece over here, but that's just feeling a little complex for me right now, and it's okay to not chain piece everything. So I'm going to set this one aside for a second. I'm going to work on that in the second step. I'm going to finish up my first step, and I'm going to lift my needle, and you always want to end with your needle in the up position. There's a couple reasons for that. One is because if it's in the down position, it might be in your fabric, and you're going to rip your fabric when you try to pull it away from the machine. The other is because if you look at the top of your machine, there is a little arm, a little lever that goes up and down as your needle goes up and down, and it helps with the tension. It pulls the thread up and down to keep even tension. There's next to it, to the right of it, is the tension discs, which also help with the tension. So by having the needle in the up position, it also puts this little lever in the up position, and so that means that the next stitch that you take, it'll go down first, which is good, because if it went up first, it would pull on the thread and it would actually unthread your needle. So if you're someone who's always finding out that you're having to rethread your machine all the time, it's probably because you're not ending with your machine needle in the up position. So once we have our needle up, the next thing we're going to do is lift the presser foot, and what this does is it releases those tension discs, which are right next to the little lever, and that allows us to easily pull the thread, and then we can cut our thread. We're going to go ahead and press these towards the background fabric. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and lay this out again to make sure that I know what I'm doing. And then I can stitch these two together and then stitch that one on, and I'll have this part done. Get to the end, needle up, press your foot up, and cut my thread. Now I could press this, but I don't need to because I know I'm just going to add this piece on right here. And I can just press them both at the same time. And while that's not chain piecing, it is getting me to my destination just a little bit quicker by batching my work. Needle up, press your foot up, cut my thread. So now I can press these, and I'm going to press them towards the background fabric. Okay, so this segment is complete. I'll be adding it on to this part. Now, my piece is a little bit bigger than my ironing surface, and that's okay. I'm just going to do my best here as I get this all pressed. Perfect. So this is our step 2 of unit A, this is our step 1 of unit A, and now it's just a couple pieces of fabric to put them together. I have my long piece along here and my shorter piece on the side. We'll go ahead and stitch these together. So I'm going to stitch the long background piece to my bottom and then stitch it to the top, and then I'll press, and then I'll add that side, and then unit A will be done. Quick before you put the top onto your background piece, make sure that your top is right side up so that you're not stitching all of your pictures on upside down. This should be getting stitched to the bottom of the pictures. Now when you're stitching across a seam that you've already sewn, like I am here, you want to make sure that your seam doesn't flip up, which isn't a problem with this one because it's facing down and the presser foot will naturally press it down. But when I get to this one, the presser foot will want to push this one open. And so I'll want to use my fingers to guide that seam allowance under the presser foot so that it stays down. And I'm doing that so that I don't get any little flips, because those flips will cause problems. Because those flips will cause bulk in the back of the quilt with the seams, and that can be difficult for when you're quilting your quilt. Okay. I'm going to give this a press. And again, I'm pressing towards my background. Okay, making sure that I have the small frames on top and the larger frame on the bottom. I'm going to add my side background piece, and that's the last stitch to do to get unit A done. While the quilt itself is bigger than the strip, if I put the strip down, that'll mean that my seam allowances are facing up, and that makes it much easier to make sure that they don't flip on me. One last press towards the background fabric. Check it out. We finished the first unit of our gallery wall quilt. Just 3 more and then we get to put them together and admire our gallery wall made of fabric. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you get the updates right away and you know when next week's video is posted. I'll see you right back here next week for Unit B of the Gallery Wall Quilt. And in the meantime, make sure you head over to Instagram and follow me, CraftMoore. That's Craftmore on Instagram, and I'll see you there.